Bible prophecy is active and unfolding daily. Zechariah 12, Isaiah 17, Psalm 83, Ezekiel 38. Here is what the LameStream Media is not telling you. Shalom, my friends. Welcome to this week's newscast. From the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, on January 1st, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani said that Tehran had imported 200 metric tons of yellow cake uranium and would import another 120 tons at a future date. These imports are permitted by the nuclear deal, but nonetheless, they significantly exceed Iran's needs for natural, unenriched uranium over the next 15 years. There's no plausible justification for the acquisition of several hundred tons of yellow cake. Iran's import of such high levels of uranium can only suggest that it is stockpiling uranium to reach nuclear breakout before the deal's initial limitations expire. From Ynet News, both the IDF and Hamas are already preparing for the next war in Gaza, as Hamas prepares to bring thousands of fighters into Israel through a network of subterranean tunnels with the intent to murder and kidnap Israelis. Colonel Yuval Ben-Dov of the IDF Southern Command said, quote, "We plan to turn the enemy's tunnels into death traps." Israel's policy is to end the next war with Hamas's defeat rather than buying 2 or 3 more years of calm. Also, regarding last week's Paris Peace Conference, I personally ignored it as a bit of a meaningless waste of time. And apparently, Benjamin Netanyahu agrees with my assessment. From the AFP, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dismissed Sunday's Middle East Peace Conference in Paris, saying, quote, "It's a rigid conference, rigged by the Palestinians with French auspices, to adopt additional anti-Israel stances. This pushes peace backwards. It is not going to obligate us. It's a relic of the past. It's a last gasp of the past before the future sets in." Close quote. Now, my friends, when Scott Clark publishes a new video, I'm on it like white on rice. I like Scotty, and his videos are always very informative. I appreciate the effort and the amount of work he puts into every production that he does. I just love what he does. And Scotty has a true matan, a true gift for clarifying and explaining the word of Yahweh like no one else does. There are many, many doctrines that so many believers take as being truth because everyone else is always agreeing with them. But they are like the flock of sheep jumping off the cliff and falling to their doom simply because the lead sheep has jumped off the cliff. As Scotty puts it, it is man-made doctrines that put blinders on men. And he is so right. So, what does this doctrine about the fullness of the Gentiles, which we read about in the Word, really mean? What is it talking about? Most have accepted this false doctrine that says the fullness of the Gentiles happens when the last believer in Yeshua acquires salvation, and then, bam, the netchatef, the rapture, happens. However, It is truly something completely different than that. The fullness of the Gentiles is not talking about the fullness of all believers being completed. And Scott walks us through the scriptures to discover what Yahweh's word says that clarifies who the Gentiles are, or what the fullness of the Gentiles is talking about. As always, he clarifies this end times topic for us like no one else ever has done before. I don't think anyone's ever said what Scotty is saying. Now, if you've already watched his video on YouTube, I'm giving you a link to a completely new production. It's the same video, but Scotty enhanced it. He added some graphics that make things a little bit clearer and easier to understand than the video on YouTube has. And he uploaded this one on Vimeo, which is the only place you'll be able to see it. It won't appear on YouTube. The enhanced version. Click the link you see beneath today's video titled Scott Clark's The Fullness of the Gentiles. Watch it, like it, share it, and if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to Scotty's Vimeo channel. Turning to wars and rumors of wars, on Sunday, January 8th, from the Washington Post, U.S. Special Operations troops carried out a ground operation deep in the heart of ISIS territory in eastern Syria. The troops, who landed in helicopters, spent 90 minutes in the area and then left carrying ISIS captives and bodies. A U.S. defense official said that during the operation, aimed at capturing an ISIS militant, a firefight broke out, and the militant, along with another person in the vehicle, was killed. No Americans were injured. From Bloomberg, a U.S. Navy guided missile naval destroyer fired warning shots at 4 Iranian rapid attack craft in the Strait of Hormuz after the armed speedboats manned by the Islamic Revolutionary Guards ignored warnings. The Iranian vessels approached the USS Mahan at a high rate of speed with their weapons manned as the ship was transiting international waters in the Strait of Hormuz. I laugh because, what are you doing? These little boats, with weapons on them going after this huge ship, they're crazy. After the Iranians ignored repeated warnings, the U.S. ship fired 3 warning shots from a .50 caliber machine gun. Turning to our Intifada update, on Monday, January 9th, from Ynet News, IDF forces shot and killed a knife-wielding terrorist after he attacked a group of soldiers in the Far'a refugee camp in the West Bank. And looking at our review of last week's news, Tehran has imported 200 metric tons of yellow cake uranium and will be importing another 120 tons at a future date, stockpiling uranium to reach nuclear breakout before the deal's initial limitations expire. Both the IDF and Hamas are already preparing for the next war in Gaza. U.S. Special Operations troops carried out a ground operation deep in the heart of ISIS territory in eastern Syria. A U.S. naval guided missile naval destroyer fired warning shots at 4 Iranian rapid attack craft in the Strait of Hormuz after the armed speedboats manned by the Islamic Revolutionary Guards ignored warnings. And IDF forces shot and killed a knife-wielding terrorist after he attacked a group of soldiers in the Far'a refugee camp in the West Bank. And that, my friends, is what the LameStream Media is not telling you. Abba willing, I'll see you here again next week. Until then, Stay safe. Shalom.
Crowded rooms, I need more space than I consume. Enough is time alone with you, underneath a naked moon, sharing confidential moods and making chatter. Mockingbird nocturnal sings notations of eternal things, entering the quantum breeze, flying not for want of wings. He lights his gaze on you and me, simply because we matter.